Good morning, everybody. So we are coming together and we are coming together to discuss that some of our NJSLA test scores have come back from last year, and we're most concerned specifically with English language arts scores because we're finding that as we progress further from the pandemic, we're not seeing the growth in student performance that we wanted to see initially. And the work that we put into our curriculum and the very intentional resources and materials that we've been sharing, we believe are effective, but it might be the way in which we approach certain objectives and standards. So today, we're just going to give you some different tools and different resources that you can start to implement in your daily practice in your classroom. So I'm going to leave this up here and I will go ahead and share this with you at the end of the professional development session. But this is just going to be a survey where you are going to provide your feedback on how well you think that we've identified this problem and how well we are then aligning our practice to best suit the needs of our students and to best kind of mediate this problem and move forward in a way that we can best support our students. So that survey will be sent out in addition to all of these slides so that you have everything you need to initiate and to implement these practices in your classroom. So we are noticing that just taking a look at some of the data that was shared from last year's test scores, that in terms of classified students, less than 15% of these students are meeting expectations on the NJSLA testing. All right, this number is extremely low, and we understand that this population tends to struggle with standardized tests just because the normal standard accommodations and modifications that are in place in the classroom for these kids are not necessarily always the same the same modifications and accommodations that they are receiving on test day, just because some of it really isn't feasible. But nonetheless, that does tend to affect the scores. And then we are also noticing that 55% of students that are non-classified are meeting expectations, okay? Now, these numbers are above state average, so that is good and that is encouraging to see. So this isn't all supposed to be negative and supposed to be critical. We want to celebrate that we are still meeting expectations that are above state level standards. However, I think this is still an area that we can improve on. And we need to focus on why this is so important and which standards specifically the students are struggling on the most. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So we noticed when we took a closer look at some of the data that specific objectives that students are struggling with is those having to do with vocabulary and context. Now, for English teachers, you're probably very familiar with this concept and that many of your students might be exhibiting a deficiency in this. This just refers to students being able to take a passage and identify what a possible definition, what the connotative definition of a word is based on the way it's being used in context. Now, this is a skill that students are struggling with because even the most basic vocabulary that we expect them to know at this point that would potentially benefit their understanding of those unknown words is typically just not there. All right. So we need to help students improve on their daily use of vocabulary and the way in which they can use context clues to help them understand these words and to better understand the passage as a whole so that they are better performing on the rest of the standardized test. And we realize that this might sound like it's very unique and very specialized to English language arts and maybe even history, but this is really a skill that can be applicable to all of the different disciplines and all of the different course areas because there is a very unique vocabulary that is applicable to all of your classes. And some of your students just might not be picking up on that. So we really want to help them do so. So we're hoping that when we come back again and look at these scores next year, we're hoping to see a 5% increase among classified and non-classified students, respectively. So two strategies that we want to share with you today are just the use of educational technology. Some of you might be using it. I've linked these different tools that I'm using in my classroom and some of our other teachers are too. We really like Blooket, Kahoot, Quizlet. We find that these are really engaging ways for students to work with vocabulary specifically because it's very easy to set up like a multiple choice situation for them. Blooket seems to be the most engaging right now and what the kids are looking into the most because it's more of a game mode in which they can steal prizes from one another. They can try to break each other's codes. So it's just very engaging and the kids get really into it. So these are some of the different tools you can use, but also too, you can really just implement repetition. This is something that is tried and true. It's worked over the years, just repeatedly having students learn these vocab words, use them in context, build sentences using them. So we're finding that both of these strategies is extremely effective. And what we're finding, as mentioned earlier, that deficiency in daily vocabulary is a struggle and something that we're working to combat. But using these tools and then constant reinforcement, constant practice is going to be the most beneficial way to come about this. And then just understanding that all kids are going to have different needs and different accommodations in place. And we really just need to make sure that we are following those. And the best thing about specifically these educational tools is that they are meeting the needs of students all on their own. And it's a really engaging way for kids to work with the vocabulary, and they don't even realize it. They don't even realize they're doing vocab because they're so in the mix of the game. And in the process, they're also learning the words. So it's really a beautiful tool that we've been using. So what we're going to be asking for you today is obviously take that survey. We want you to reflect on the deficiency that we are seeing and then the way that we are going to combat this. We want to hear your feedback on just how feasible it is for you to implement these strategies and just anything that you think we can improve on going forward. And then anything you're noticing after implementing these strategies that might be really useful for us when we come back next year and we reevaluate these NJSLA scores moving forward.